Happy Friday, hockey fans. Welcome into a new edition of Daily Faceoff Live. And the show is a presentation of Bet365. Download the app. Use the promo code NATION to get in on a huge range of markets. Tyler Uremchuk and Frank Saravalli with you. Apologies for starting a little late. A bit of a tech hiccup. But Frank, that's Friday. Who cares? It's Friday. I'm not worried.
Yeah, they let us get to Friday again. And after a 14-game Thursday night, I mean, it was pretty wild.
We had blowouts. We had standout performances. We also had a couple of notable injuries, Frank. Anthony Stolarz in Toronto, Evan Bouchard in Edmonton. Any updates there?
Yeah, so Dennis Hildebeest has been recalled by the Toronto Maple Leafs, but I don't believe there's anything too significant with this Stolarz injury. The fact that he was able to complete the first period was a good sign. It seemed like he tweaked something when he was going down to try and make the save on that Frank Vetrano shot. So the Leafs were waiting to reevaluate Stolarz today, but shouldn't be anything too long-term.
Yeah, maybe just a bit more precautionary than anything. We're going to be joined by Jeff Patterson in a little bit. Speaking of injuries and that sort, JT Miller played last night. Thatcher Demko's back for the Vancouver Canucks. We'll talk about all that stuff with J-Pat in a little bit, but let's zero in on that big slate last night, Frank, which featured 3 pretty sizable blowouts. You had the Pittsburgh Penguins popping up 9 on the Montreal Canadiens. Somehow Evgeny Malkin goes pointless and was a -1 in that hockey game, by the way. The Tampa Bay Lightning beat the Calgary Flames 8-3. The Oilers stomped the Wild in surprising fashion 7-1. So let me just simply ask you, which one of these stood out the most to you and maybe even impressed you the most?
Probably the Lightning against the Calgary Flames, because think about that night. Speaking of injuries, Victor Hedman takes warm-up and line rushes, late scratch. They're already without Eric Chernak. They give up a goal pretty early on. Jonathan Huberdeau scores for the Flames, and the Flames have been a pesky team to play against. They generally, for the most part, haven't given up too much, and their goalies have been really good. So to put 8 past the Flames, to me, for a Lightning team that has sort of, a lot of people this week have been throwing shade toward the Preds at the benefit of the Lightning, saying, hey, how genius does Julian Breezeball look moving on from Steven Stamkos? And then you see Jake Gensel last night, monster night for him. And yeah, all those things look great, but here's the thing. The Lightning to this point are still on pace for 94 points, which barely gets you a playoff spot. So I would save the gloating for later. That's why the win is a little bit impressive.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. Jake Gensel, by the way, on pace for north of 45 goals now on the season, close to 90 points. So he is fitting in like a glove in Tampa. Edmonton
and Sam Montembeault, by the way, he takes a maintenance day, and I guess for all Canadians goalies, it should be kind of a therapy day.
Yeah, that was a tough one last night to watch. Edmonton beats Minnesota 7-1. First time the Oilers have won in Minnesota in close to 6 years, Frank. For Minnesota on that one, though, I think that is, considering the way things have gone so far this year, one of those games where you can sit there and be like, you know what? We're probably due for a couple of bad bounces. And there were a couple of brutal bounces for the Wild in that game last night. Like, if I'm a Minnesota fan, I'm not sitting there going, oh, are we frauds? No, I'm not worried at all. That's a throw it up.
Well, it's not necessarily totally throw it out, because I'm really concerned about the injury to Jacob Middleton. He was in the first 37 seconds of the game, first shift of the game. He reaches out to block a shot and it hits his right hand, and he leaves the game. The early, we're still waiting to hear more, but the early prognosis seemed to indicate it wasn't very good. This is a team that's already, Jonas Brodin is on his way back. He's been skating, but if you have Middleton, who is your top pair left shot D, and Brodin out, well, congratulations. You're now sliding in John Merrill to the top pair of your left side, and that's not sustainable. So certainly of concern, depending on how long Middleton is out. Yeah, the wheels kind of fell off for the Wild after that, and understandably so to some respect, but that Middleton injury could loom large.
Yeah, that could be a big one. Maybe a David Urechek recall coming in Minnesota if it's a significant or long-term injury.
Yeah, Juracek has been up. He just hasn't been playing, I think.
No, they sent him down to Iowa a couple days ago.
Okay, there you go.
But yeah, there may be a recall coming here in the next couple of days. Let's talk about some of the standout solo performances around the league last night, Frank, including the topic of our Dominion Lending Center poll question today, which is Macklin Celebrini or Connor Bedard. If you had to pick one right now, who would you choose? And last night, they each scored pretty impressive goals. Let's start, Pat, roll the Bedard one, where this is one of those where I think when you watch it the first time, it seems innocent enough. But what makes Bedard so dangerous, the ability to release the puck from absolutely anywhere. Like, again, he is leaning back, not quite back foot, but again, leaning away from the goal to get that kind of power and throw it to the other side of the net is crazy impressive. This angle does maybe do it a bit more justice. The other one from Macklin Celebrini, similar in the sense that Celebrini, again, is leaning back. Like, this isn't, it's a laser beam of a shot from Celebrini, but it's not one where he can take 2-3 strides in and then absolutely unload it. Like, he picks a corner here and looks so casual doing it. Which goal impressed you the most?
Probably Bedard. I mean, look, Celebrini has been, and this will probably be the answer to my poll question too. Celebrini has looked so good, and a 2-goal night for him. Here's the thing. I was doing Amazon Coast to Coast last night, and we had Claude Giroux on actually live while Bedard scored the goal, and they were replaying it. And they're like, "What do you think?" He's like, "I'm actually mad." He was like, I'm mad because he makes that look so easy, and there's so few guys in the league that can do that. To do that all in one motion too is kind of what makes that super impressive. And that's not to take anything away from the Celebrini goal, but that's just next level.
Yeah, it was pretty disgusting. A couple of usual characters around the league doing their usual stuff. Nikita Kucherov becomes the 7th player since the beginning of last season to have a 6+ point game. It's also the 4th time he's had 5+ points in a game since the start of last year. He also put up those 6 points last night in only 16 shifts. Frank, that is absolute beer league kind of numbers to go out there and go, yeah, basically half my shifts I put up a point. No big deal.
It's so casual, isn't it? Like, that's what drives you crazy, I think, probably, is like just the way that he does it and pulls it off. He's so good and so sublime as he does it. And I'd say, not to be outdone, but Scott Laughton and his 4-goal night, he has a breakaway clapper, which was unbelievable, old school, and then picks up another one and gets 2 empty netters. So 4-goal night for Scott Laughton, first 4-goal night by any Flyer since 2002. But he's the first ever Flyer to do it when he scores all 4 of his team's goals in a 4-1 win over the, what do you call them? Struggling, scuffling, sideways Detroit Red Wings. I mean, running out of adjectives.
Yeah, not good. Anthony DeMarco has a piece up at dailyfaceoff.com today about the struggling Detroit Red Wings. Let's go to another struggling team out east, although they're coming off a win, which kind of makes the frustration a little bit more weird. But Patrick Waugh was heated last night after the game. Let's take a listen.
Obviously, you get out to a 5-1 lead. Some of the guys were a little disappointed at the end, but do you look at it more as you get the points, you move on, and that's good enough?
Part of it. It's a win is a win, and we played to win games. But I guess times has changed, because in my days, if my team would have done that to me, I will break a stick in that room. I'll be very upset to see my team playing like this in front of me. Ilya is a gentleman. He's a first-class person. But that was unacceptable. We didn't compete. We didn't battle in front of the net in the last 8 minutes. That's unacceptable. We talked about it this morning to be stronger. Our goalie deserves more respect than this from ourselves.
Frank, what did you make of Patrick Waugh's comments after a 5-4 win over the Blackhawks?
This was coming. Like, not only have the Islanders just had brutal losses in third periods this season, but he has, for the most part, kept calm. And this was a sort of, this was a peek at the very fiery Patrick Waugh that we knew as a player. He has thrown some veiled shots at Lou Lamoriello, reading between the lines about the roster that he's been given. And it just seems like this is reaching a boiling point for a team that doesn't change. It's the same thing night after night. And it's not just a league worst penalty kill or second worst power play, as you see here. It's also what appears to be some significant mental fragility with this team when it comes to closing out games. And they could have a lot more points. They could be in a better position, but I think this is more or less, one of the most milquetoast teams in the NHL in the sense that they're not truly bad. They're not good, and they're stuck in that mushy middle with no direction and no vision.
Yeah, and again, we've had people in the comments over the last couple of weeks being like, "Oh, could they do something crazy? Could they trade one of their defensemen who's got a ton of term? Think of the haul they'd get if they moved on from Anders Lee with a year and a half remaining on his deal." And my response to that is like, even if it's not going well for the Islanders, I know we talked about Brock Nelson being a guy that they could look to move because he's a pending UFA, but Lou took over whatever 6 years ago. There's no reason to think that they're going to sell off some sort of big piece here in season. So if you're another fan base sitting there going, man, I hope they keep struggling so this guy or this guy can shake loose, I'd say don't hold your breath.
I agree. And if anything, it's likely to go in the wrong direction and move Brock Nelson than anything else.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of goaltending, Frank, let's talk a little bit about the Carolina Hurricanes crease. I know Pierre LeBrun reported yesterday maybe some interest from Carolina in a guy like John Gibson. We're, a few days removed from the Mackenzie Blackwood deal and the Avs shoring up their goaltending. What do you think the appetite's like in Carolina to maybe shore up their crease with the injuries they've been dealing with?
I'd say it's a situation that they're monitoring. I don't know. They were actively making a bunch of calls maybe a week to 10 days ago. They were, obviously initially really concerned. How would this Pyotr Kochetkov return come from the concussion, and would it take a week or a month? And once that kind of settled down, they knew that, at some point here in relatively short order, Freddie Anderson is not dealing with a blood clot like he was previously. This is a knee injury. We know at some point he'll be back. Does Freddie Anderson sometimes take a week longer than most to rehab and return to make sure he's 100% ready? Yes. That said, they are definitely monitoring the market. So Blackwood was out there. You have Dan Vladar in Calgary. You have Karel Vejmelka in Utah. You have John Gibson, as you mentioned. There's a whole slew of goalies available. And basically what Carolina is looking at is the rest of the board saying, well, how many other teams are in a position where they're actually looking for a goalie? Since Colorado has been crossed off, I'd say the list is very small. So what that means is there's more out there than there are teams that need them. And eventually the price should come down. And so doesn't mean they're absolutely going to do something. Freddie Anderson's numbers have been great when he's in there, but they're definitely keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, and if you're the Carolina Hurricanes, I mean, you have the second best points percentage in the Eastern Conference. It's not like you're struggling or sitting in a wild card spot. Like, you have the ability to be patient. And like you said, Frank, if there are a lot of names on the market and not a lot of shoppers, I think Eric Tulsky can absolutely kick his feet up and go, I'll wait till something falls in my lap here until I get an absolute bargain, because they're in no way being forced to do anything. Let's continue along with the show and get to the big segment for the day. It's the All 32, and it's brought to you by Fountain Tire. You and your family's safety is important. That's why they treat your vehicle like it's their vehicle. And right now, you can save up to $225 on a set of 4 select tires, including Goodyear, up until December 14th. That's tomorrow, by the way. Last chance to take advantage of the deal. Plus, you can save an extra $50 on any service of $150 or more. Some restrictions apply. Check them out online at fountaintire.com. Always a pleasure to welcome Jeff Patterson to the program from Canucks Army in rink-wide Vancouver. And J-Pat, let's start with JT Miller's return to the lineup. He didn't play a ton. I think he was 5th lowest on the Canucks in ice time. But what did you make of his return on the ice, and I guess also off the ice? Like, is there any awkwardness there as he returns to that room?
Yeah, let's start with the off the ice. Met the media yesterday after the morning skate, laid down the ground rules. You've probably seen the clips there, and I think it all went very respectfully. Now, we didn't learn much. He wanted to keep it to hockey, and the media members, for the most part. There was one question that he thought sort of towed the line, prying a little bit. Didn't want to answer that one, but there's still a lot of intrigue and mystery about the reasons behind his 10-game absence. But he was back, and I like the way they used him. They eased him in. They got a lead last night. They built on it. That's something the Canucks haven't done very much this year, especially compared to last year. That was their secret sauce. They jumped on opponents and then extended leads. Last night to get a 2-0 first period lead. That gave Rick Tocchet a little bit of flexibility to be able to roll all four lines and not lean on guys. So Miller played 14 minutes, had a couple of assists on the power play. Lots of good things in his return. And it is funny, and we've all seen this, guys. One player comes back into the lineup in piece, and everybody else just sort of falls their natural spot in the lineup. And I thought the Canucks looked as stout as their forward bank group, as we've seen in quite some time. So getting JT Miller back helped in a lot of ways for the Vancouver Canucks, and certainly on the scoreboard, a 4-0 win over the defending champs.
Jeff, we're just going to have you check your mic there. You might be on the wrong one. We were getting lots of feedback. And so take a second to do that as I ask you this next one. How did the market react to JT kind of controlling the narrative yesterday and saying, hey, look, I'm not going to answer or talk about my situation and why I was out? I mean, this is a mostly unprecedented thing. He decided November 19th. He returned yesterday, December 12th. The Canucks played 10 games. They went 5-3-2 without him. They survived, but still a highly unusual thing, even if it is not nefarious, to then not address it.
Yeah, without a doubt. Just don't see this where a star player steps away for a personal leave and doesn't provide the answers that I think the marketplace is looking for. And it was mixed out here. There was a big segment of the fan base that thought, hey, we pay the freight here and the ticket prices. We deserve some answers. And then there were a lot of people that were like, hey, this is a human being. Like, yeah, he's a hockey hero. But these guys have issues as well. And, just let him be and let him sort it out. And for him to step aside and the Canucks to hold their head above water as an organization in his absence. And, really, it has been remarkable when you think of all the pieces that have been missing from this Vancouver lineup, from Thatcher Demko to Dakota Joshua, Brock Besser, JT Miller. And for them to have the record they do at 15-8-5, like, it really is commendable. It hasn't been pretty all the time, but it's been pretty effective. And to get some of these guys back now, and Miller's such a big piece of the engine of this hockey club and the heart and soul, the way that he plays, they were missing that. So, I mean, look, we may never get some answers, or maybe we will when JT is ready to reveal a little bit more. He's not an open book necessarily, so I'm not expecting that at some point he's going to ask us all to gather around for story time and bring us inside his world. All I know is that he says he needed to step away. He's in a better place, and we'll see what he does here moving forward. But, for a lot of guys, if you step back in the lineup, whether an injury or this sort of absence, if you go 3 or 4 games and you're not productive, I think you start to wonder about your game. Where is it? And for him to jump back in, have a couple of assists, contribute on the power play, and to get a win over the Florida Panthers, that checks a lot of boxes for JT Miller and for the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, no doubt. And also, perhaps more importantly, a quality win on home ice. This team has struggled so much at home this year. They've been really good on the road. Has anyone been able to put their finger on why these home and road splits have been so weird?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons. One is, if you look at their opponents, they have feasted on really bad teams around the NHL out of the road. Credit to them. Those are the opponents that are on the schedule on a given night. But their road record really is on the backs of a lot of the weaker teams in the National Hockey League. So that's part of it. I also think they've won a ton of close games. They have ground out and found ways to get the goals that they needed. I think they have 3 overtime wins on the road. They scored in the final minute in San Jose after the Sharks had tied with a minute to go. Got a 3-2 win there. So they have found ways to eke out road victories where at home they found ways to lose. And I mean, the margins are fine in the NHL. And I think that's a big part of it. Part of it too, Frank, is, and I mentioned, they just, first of all, they haven't opened the scoring very much. So they've been chasing a lot of games, particularly at home. And last night against Florida was the first time since opening night against Calgary that they had a 3-0 lead. Now, you can't bank on having 3-0 leads, but I'm just saying they haven't pulled away from opponents very often, and they've allowed teams to hang around. Even if they do open the scoring, it feels like They opened the scoring against Tampa earlier in the week, and then Tampa gets 2 quick ones, and all of a sudden the Canucks are back and trailing. And so there's just been a bunch of different things. And Kevin Lankinen, for whatever reason, has been a little bit better on the road than he has at home. But I also think quality of opponent. They've played some good teams here at Rogers Arena that they just haven't faced. And they will at the end of the season. You play 41 at home and 41 on the road. So they've got a bit of a beast of a road schedule coming up through January and February. And that's going to be a real test for them.
Jeff, as always, man, appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this.
All right, guys.
Moving along to our daily Faceoff inbox question. Frank, I got one for you. I saw you tweeting about it yesterday, but this McCarron incident where he's cut, why is this kind of getting so much attention from the league? Maybe not public attention, but behind the scenes.
Well, it's not necessarily from the league. It's from me. Look, this was a super scary incident, and check out this video here. Mike McCarron is a giant at 6'6", and if he's getting skates in the neck, just imagine how many other close calls there are. And the league's hockey operations department is marking and clipping these. They're happening by the dozens this season. He actually was cut, had to go back to the locker room and get repairs. This could have been so much worse, and this isn't even the closest that it's been this season in the NHL. And my only point was the league should take a whole montage of these clips and put them all together and have, for a 2-minute video session, 3-minute video session, just play it for every team in the league and make the players watch it, because I think that they live in this bubble where they think, oh, it's not going to be me, or it can't happen to me, or, that was just a freak accident. The routine nature with which this is happening means that it's not. And the statistics show us that only 7.7% of the league are wearing neck protection this season. I have a feeling it's something that the league is going to ask for in the next CBA negotiations, which are scheduled to start in February. But until then, just take a second, if you're a player, to heed the warning, because the last thing we want to see is anything close to what happened to Adam Johnson. And there's been a whole host of other accidents and issues around minor hockey. It's a non-invasive thing. And I had someone tweet at me today after I sent it out, and he said, oh yeah, that's soft. Let's just wrap players in bubble. And it's like, no, that's not the point. Like, bud, seatbelts were optional at 1.2. And we know that they save lives, and it's non-invasive. So it's not about being soft. They're about living in a bubble. I'm the furthest person that you're gonna hear from talking about that stuff. But it involves like literally wearing a collar that could be part of your shirt. Like it's really not that complicated, and it could save you a whole host of trouble. So I just wish that as we see more and more of these close calls, and Mike McCarron's incredibly lucky last night. But at 6'6", that should send a warning shot across the rest of the league.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. Let's move along to our Dominion Lending Center's poll question results for the day. Is your mortgage up for renewal? Lock in the best rates by speaking with one of their mortgage experts at DominionLending.ca. Frank, the people have spoken. Bedard v. Celebrini. And over on Twitter, it's 62% of the vote saying Macklin Celebrini over Connor Bedard. Is that recency bias, or is there something there?
Well, there's two things to it. One is recency bias, because you've seen the impact that he's been able to have on a really bad Sharks team, and he's been carrying them, and he's looked so good doing it. That said, go back to the Frankly Speaking episode that I had with Jay Pandolfo last year, the Boston University coach who had Macklin Celebrini, and he said, as a longtime NHLer himself, we also know Macklin Celebrini's family history. His dad has been one of the strength coaches and sports science directors, VPs for the Golden State Warriors. He's been training as a professional athlete for like 5-6 years now. He's also big, and he invites physical contact. So he was exceptionally well prepared to step into the NHL as an 18-year-old and go to battle. And it's not to say that Connor Bedard isn't, but the reason why I would pick Bedard here is you see a goal like last night, you see some rushes that he has. He's got a long, long way to go to get there, But I think the ceiling on Connor Bedard and what he's able to accomplish is just a tad higher in terms of skill set. And so there are things working against him in this comparison. I know for certain watching Celebrini that he's an NHL center. I'm like 90% convinced Bedard is, but I think you have to allow for the possibility that he's better as a winger. That I think when you go through this comparison, there's a lot that Bedard brings to the table that he hasn't been able to kind of put together yet, that I would still lean toward the ceiling for Bedard.
And I do think that's fair. Our YouTube chat, by the way, was in alignment with Twitter at 65% in favor of Celebrini. Let's get to our daily bets for the day, brought to you by Bet365. Use the promo code NATION when you download the app. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. After a loaded slate yesterday, we got one game on tap. Sens Canes tonight. I'm going with a goal scorer because it's a Friday, and I like doing that. Andrei Svechnikov has 5 goals in his last 10. He's pretty far down the list, too, at plus 180. I like the value here on Andrei Svechnikov to find the back of the net. I feel like the Canes should be able to get some semblance of the offense going against Ottawa. So there's your daily bet for Bet365. And Frank, we'll wrap up with a little garbage time. And last night, the Washington Capitals had a come-from-behind victory over the Columbus Blue Jackets. You had a chance to chat with Dylan Strome about a whole bunch of things, and one of them being the confidence they have when they're trailing. They're never rattled. Let's take a listen.
You know, we go into a game and if we're down 2-0, it's like our team at this point right now is just, you know, very confident that we're going to get 3 or 4. And our goalies kind of feel that too. Like Montreal on Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday, we're down 2-1 in the third. And Thompson makes 4 breakaway saves in the first 7 minutes of the third. And it's just like, you know, when a goalie does that, you just feel confident that, you know, he knows that we're going to get 2, and then it just builds the confidence for us. So I think personally, when the team's scoring so much, the power play is rolling, you know, and it's nice to be put in a position to succeed. And when you get that opportunity, you got to try to, you know, make the most of it.
Frank, what else did you take away from your chat with Dylan Strome?
Dylan Strome is on pace for 106 points this year. I don't know that people have necessarily keyed in on that. And he's been able to maintain a lot of that production even without assisting on 11 out of Alex Ovechkin's 15 goals scored so far since Ovechkin has been out. So he's got an incredible story, and we unpacked a lot of it, including some tough moments. Like, think back to a few years ago. He was a healthy scratch on opening night for the Chicago Blackhawks, scratched in 7 out of the first 11 games of the season. They fire Jeremy Colleton. He still puts up 22 goals and 48 points in the final 60-some games of the year. They couldn't get anything for him at the trade deadline. They didn't qualify him. He goes to Washington. He's now had back-to-back 60-plus point seasons. And, oh, by the way, this breakout year for a guy who's still only 27. He's living up to the number 3 overall pick status. And he's a really, he's got a ton of insight. So he spoke eloquently about Spencer Carberry. Also, you know, talked to him about being a big dog guy. He's a big golden retriever guy. We got all over the place. His group chat with his family, his brother, Ryan, of course, plays for the Ducks, and his other brother, Matt, is in the Caps organization in Hershey. Just a really enjoyable conversation for a guy that has very quietly had an unbelievable season for the top team in the East. 10 straight road wins.
Yeah,
only 12 teams in NHL history have ever done that.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive what's going on in Washington this season. And Strome, I mean, Gord says it, breaking out 8 years after getting drafted is nuts. And yeah, it goes to show again, development, never a straight line. Great interview with Dylan Strome. You can find it wherever you get your podcast from by searching Frankly Speaking, or watch it right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. Another big reason why you should be subscribed to the channel. That is a wrap for today's edition of the show. Enjoy the one game tonight and then the full slate tomorrow on Saturday. Have a great weekend, hockey fans. We'll be back Monday at noon Eastern. See you then. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content, from daily live shows with Frank Saravalli to analysis from former NHLers to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.